G'day guys, and welcome to episode 4 of Caleb's Conversation podcast. Today, I've got Helena and Holly on with me, and we're going to be talking about the Griffith Film School, graduate film, A Christmas Murder, and the wickedly diabolical proceedings at the Midstow.
Yes.
This was a project that was very fun to work on. I also worked on it with you guys, and I was going to say, you, Helena, were the director of the project, and Holly, you were the production designer. So what we're going to be talking about is obviously you guys, how you guys got involved in the project, what you guys were doing on the project, and obviously expanding on what you guys did as your roles, because obviously you guys play a very pivotal role in not only the creation of the film, but how it looks and how it feels tonally as well. So I'll say, are you guys like interested in films, obviously getting into the industry and stuff? Because obviously coming to film school, that's a huge thing. Obviously you want to get on set as much as possible. What was kind of your intrigue into getting into filmmaking?
For me, I've always been into filmmaking since I was super young. Always had a camera. Making films with my sister at home all the time. And then we didn't have any film subjects at high school, but yeah. So I just did drama and acting. But then when we got into when I saw that there was the film course at Griffith, I was like, yes, this is the one for me. So I definitely wanted to get into that. Yeah.
Kind of fell straight into it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Yeah. I did a lot of photography when I was younger, and I just like cameras overall. And then I did film at high school for 3 years or something. And then I'm like, well, I kind of got to a crossroad where I was like, I either do something practical or I do something fun. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, we're going to do something fun. So I was pretty interested in Griffith, and I saw they did the film course, and I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot.
I feel like I have a similar kind of story to you, because I did a media type film course at high school, and that kind of sparked my interest kind of at a grassroots level. And then I saw a little film you might have heard of, Star Wars The Force Awakens, in 2015. And that was kind of the film that kind of really was the light bulb moment for me. I was like, I want to know how they did that and how they brought this to life and how movies are made. And from then I've just expanded my knowledge, and then obviously came to film school. Did you guys come to film school straight out of high school?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, because I was the same as well. Yeah. I'll say I kind of went straight out of high school into uni, so I didn't really take a gap year or anything like that.
Yeah, I didn't have any ambitions to travel straight away. I just wanted to get into film, get into uni, get into film. But it's funny. The funny thing is, my top preference for universities was actually engineering at QUT. And then my friend Anna McGuckin, who also went to film school, was like, oh, you should definitely apply for this instead. And I was like, yes, I should. I don't know why I would have done engineering at all. So glad that I got into it, and now we're here. Almost finished.
Yeah,
Have you graduated?
Yeah, I'm graduated.
Nice.
Oh yeah. I'll say it's one of those things, sometimes you don't really know what you want in life until it just kind of happens. That's one of those things. I feel like filmmaking is very much so one of those things that's sometimes you don't really know what the final product is going to look like. And that's why the project, when you're making it, is sometimes a bit it's a bit nerve-wracking, because you're like, I don't know how this is going to end up. But then when you see that final product, it's always quite rewarding, especially if everyone's done their job properly and it's a great film to watch. So
for sure.
But with regards to A Christmas Murder, this was a project that was designed as a TV pilot, correct? Do you just want to tell us a little bit about what the story is and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so our friend James Marshall actually wrote it with the help of Carmen Chan as well.
Carmen's pretty involved.
Yeah, Carmen Chan was the producer of the project.
So this film's had quite a long journey itself. James was director at first, and throughout COVID we had to stay at home in quarantine and still try and produce this film, and then thankfully we got to actually do it in person in the end. But James, in the end, he got a job on the Elvis film. So he dropped out of uni, and then I was production manager before I turned into director to take James's spot. So I turned into director and took on the role. I wrote a few more scenes to add into it, just to develop
You did
the
some
story.
editing on the script and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And
so you do get that writer's credit.
Yeah. I got a little co-writer credit, because we did add a scene in the beginning. Because Yeah, I think some of the tutors thought it needed a bit more substance in the beginning,
context.
A bit of context, and it was just a small scene, but I think it did add like a little more context to who was in the building, who was in the midst. But like, so basically, I'll tell you a bit about the story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is about. It's about this lady Julia, whose mother Agorna mysteriously vanished recently. Oh, sorry, not recently. A year ago. Kind of recent. She mysteriously vanished, and then she gave over her establishment to her daughter Julia, called the Midstowe Hotel. And Julia didn't want this hotel at all. She ran it to the ground. Basically, it was a beautiful hotel before, but she ran it to the ground. Julia did. And this maid Martha, who works there, she was like this happy-go-lucky girl, super bright, super bubbly, but Julia didn't want to have anything to do with her. She completely hated her. And one night they find, should I give away what happened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go into spoilers.
Yeah. Well, Vincent Maguire, who's this famous actor, is staying at the hotel, and they find him murdered in his room, and the story is about them trying to figure out who the murderer was. Yeah.
It's kind of like a murder mystery.
Yeah, murder mystery.
It's kind of similar to Knives Out and like Clue and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's very much so got that vibe. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'll say just to back up with regards to James Marshall's involvement, he was obviously the writer of the film and kind of brought this thing to life. And then you came onto the project quite late into the process. You kind of brought on, I think, around the time that we just got ready to go back into filming in person, correct?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks before.
Yeah. So it was quite stressful for you because not only were you brought onto the project kind of last minute, but also you're coming into the role of director, and that's a very important role because not only are you responsible for the creative vision, but also dealing with actors, which is very interesting because the dynamic between a director and the actors is obviously huge. So what was it like kind of coming on last minute into this project that was already kind of in motion?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. It was difficult to say the least, but it was something that I really wanted to take on. It was a challenge, and I wanted to take it on. And James came to me and he was like, I'm thinking of you, but obviously because our teachers put it out to the whole grade, so because it had to be a fair go for the role. So there was an interview process, and in the end I was able to get the role, and I was really, really thankful, really grateful for that, because to be director on a graduate film was such an honour, really, especially because I didn't write it, to be able to come in this late.
To be that kind of person that kind of shepherds this project along.
Yeah, it was an honour, and I was really thankful to be able to do that.
I'll say, well, you handled it very well. I'll say, considering you did come on last minute, I think you did a really good job, because a lot of people could have capitulated in a situation like that and very much so dropped the ball. And I felt like you not only carried the torch, but you took it all the way to the finish line and did a really good job, because the final product I thought was very good. It was very entertaining.
And I really wanted to make sure that James and Carmen's vision was, seen through to the end. Because we had so many hurdles, so many obstacles throughout it all, which you can talk about later. But it was 2 weeks out, and there was still so much to do, so much pre-production still to do, because I feel like COVID kind of halted our, even though we were still able to do all the paperwork, everything like that.
It didn't kind of feel the same.
No, exactly, yeah. Especially for production design, actually being able to build sets, and because for ours the whole main bedroom was a set built by Holly and her team. So
well, that's one of the reasons why I was so interested to talk to you, because obviously building a set with various different walls and then creating all the architecture and stuff inside the room, that's quite difficult, and I was very impressed with the work you and your team did. And it's one of those things that whenever I go into a film, and I've noticed this a lot with a lot of low budget stuff and student films, is that sometimes the sets just don't look right. And you can tell it's a set. And even with a lot of big budget stuff, you can kind of tell it's a set. And that always takes me out of it. And it's like, God damn it, I can tell that that's not real. And when I was watching A Christmas Murder, I could say, I just got lost in it, and I was like, that looks real.
Yeah,
so it was very well done. But with regards to production design in a pre-production process, what's it like kind of getting everything sort of ready and planned for everything when it gets ready into production?
Yeah, I have a weird like way of doing things. I basically just like make a list and I'm like, well, this is all you have to get done in like the next few weeks. Do it.
Yeah.
So I pretty much like made a prop list, made sure we had everything. I did a lot of op shopping. Thankfully, I didn't have to handle costume. I suck at costume. I can't even dress myself. So I put lovely Claire onto that, and she sorted that out. And then we had someone on makeup. So thankfully, all of like the really rough bits were handled, and all I really had to do was like source some props and get all the paint for the flats. We pretty much painted it in the 2 days before we shot, because we can only have the sound studio for so long. But yeah, it was like my team was really, really good when we came to building it. But yeah, I did a lot of like just running around.
Holly did a lot of work, like a lot of work herself.
I hate saying it.
No, because yeah, like obviously, and we even had to get people outside of the production design team to be able to paint the flats, build the flats.
Because there was only
I
three of us.
for a day and helped.
Yeah, there was only 3 of us on the team, and like they all had their own projects to be working on.
Yeah,
and they were all really busy. Like
I think people were just spread a bit too thin, or like maybe said that they could help out and then they couldn't, and that's totally fine. Like we get that, and then we got other people to do it, but it was a lot of work. And like Jeanne was ADing and a whole other project. I didn't expect her to be there all the time. I'm like, take your time. And Bella had a passion
It's definitely
project.
difficult because with student films especially, I feel like you really get as much out of it that you put into it. And if you put that love and care into it, you're going to get more love and care on the screen. And I feel like that was definitely representative of our film, is that we were not only putting so much effort into it, but then you could see that that effort had turned out and really, it was a reward for all our hard work, I felt like. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. It was, in the end, like all the effort that we put into it, all the obstacles that we faced, it was a good achievement to be able to like finish it and have such an amazing product in the end. And like Tony as well, Tony Wedderburn.
Tony's our editor. She's great. We love Tony. Yeah,
I love working with Tony. She is so good. And just...
It was a great crew. Just everyone all around was just so pleasant to work with, and both on set and just everything. It was just an amazing atmosphere to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that's what we got most lucky with. Like the crew was all pretty like tightly knit. Like I've worked with James since first year. Same with Carmen and Tony. Like I know the guys really well, and like I feel like everyone who came onto it, we all just vibed together, and like we had some moments where we all just got overstressed, but we were never actually angry at each other.
No,
which was great.
Exactly. Like you can like differentiate work and like friendship, I think, as well. Like sometimes you have to, like we still respected each other. Yeah, so respecting,
It's funny you mention that, because I feel like that's such a difficult thing to try and like to balance, you know what I mean? Is when you're working with your friends,
so
is
hard.
Balancing that sort of professional like feeling as well as being friendly with each other. And that's why I get really intrigued when like couples and stuff work together, because it's like you're working with your partner, but then you also need to keep that professional aspect as well. That's why I'm amazed by A Quiet Place, because John Krasinski and Emily Blunt work together, and they're obviously married. And that, like, from what interviews I've heard with them, they said that was one of the best experiences of their lives. And I was like, I was surprised by that, because a lot of people would be like, when, like, especially because John Krasinski was the director of that film, and he's giving his wife directions. It could just imagine it'd be quite meta and weird.
I'm sure she'd probably be as professional as possible.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I guess different personalities would,
personality is obviously a huge part of it, but with regards to getting everything ready for production design, did you go through the script and stuff and then kind of plan it from there? And how's that process of breaking down a script from a production design standpoint?
Well, I know James pretty well, and I kind of like know exactly what he envisions. So like I pretty much just went through it, and I'm like, well, this is what you want here, and he's like, yes, and I'm like, what about it here? And he goes, yes. So I'm like, okay, I got this. And then pretty much just went through it, and then like just cross-referenced with him, made sure that I was getting everything right. The color palettes, that was the hardest bit, because he changes his mind like he never changes clothes. It's awful. Like, I mean, he changes clothes at the same speed, let's be honest. So that was probably the hardest bit, because we kept changing minds on color palettes, and then we had to like involve Matt, the DOP, in with that, and make sure like everything was going to work with lighting and all that. But pretty much just I like mark up the script and just color code everything, because I can't read it unless it's in colors. And
I'll say when you color coordinate stuff, it's a nice visual way of looking at it.
Yeah, I'm a bit dyslexic, so I have to make sure everything makes sense, or else I don't understand it.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you've gone through and broken down the script at that level, then what's the next phase after that? Do you have to like go out and buy all the stuff, or do you have to kind of like go find, or do you like borrow stuff? Like, how do you go about sourcing all the equipment?
I believe I made a big old list from that, and then like did reference photos, and then I went out.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I spent days with Jana and Bella, and we went out and we went to like all these op shops, or like we went to IKEA. I spent like $160 at IKEA. It was great. My favorite part about like buying everything is it's not my money.
Yeah, yeah.
Carmen,
some of it is.
yeah, some like Carmen entrusted me with the production card, which was great.
Yeah.
Although I didn't have it for like 2 weeks, and I was like $700 down. I'm like, this is great. But yeah, I pretty much just went out, all the op shops, a bunch of just like general stores. Like I looked everything up online, so I knew I wouldn't be wasting time looking in places that it wasn't what I wanted. And I spent a lot of money at Kmart.
I think definitely for something like production design, a key thing to do for your team was to always come back to Holly and check, and then Holly would come back to James, or for example me, and like check, like always checking in with your HODs was like a major thing, because I've experienced it on other films before where people just make a decision, but what if the person who has the vision doesn't like it? Like, say, what if James didn't like it? You got to always come and check instead of buying something and then wasting money.
Oh, exactly.
And then coming back, and it's like, and like you said, if you're changing colors all the time, like you gotta make a decision, like stick to it, and then buy stuff for that, and not go back on it, because something like school film production, we don't have much money. Like we don't have the biggest
budgets. Yeah. Well, that's very important, is that everyone is on the same page, so that everyone is on the same train, moving, not only in the right direction, but moving quickly as well. Because the other thing with filmmaking is that you don't have a lot of time. You're on a very strict time, like you got very strict time that you have to go over, and you got to make sure you're hitting all your deadlines within that. So I can imagine, especially for pre-production, it's very much so making sure we got all the props, everything, all the sets ready to go, and then so that once you do get to production, you can kind of rock up with all the camera and sound gear and then just shoot it. So I should also clarify, I haven't done this yet because I'm an idiot. But my involvement on this project, I was the casting supervisor. So I was in charge of casting this project and bringing on our actors on board. And we were very fortunate to be working with a magnificent cast.
Yes. Thank you, Kayla.
Yes. Thank you. I'll say I am only a symptom of the lovely people that I got to cast. So it was one of those things, like throughout the audition process, obviously you never know who you're going to get, especially on a student project. And the big thing with student films is that we can't pay actors to come on board. So a lot of it is voluntary work, and so them kind of giving up their own time to come and work on our projects, I think it's obviously very nice of them, but they kind of get like a nice symbiotic relationship out of it, because they're able to practice their craft whilst we practice ours, and then you also get to build connections and relationships and stuff like that, which is great.
Yeah, and then they get the product at the end, like they get to show it for their reel, like it's something for us.
Yeah, it's a good showreel material.
Yeah. And stuff like, it's good showreel material for us, and it is for them as well. So it's win-win, I think. But it is hard, because we did have some run-ins with like actors pulling out, etc.
It was an interesting process, because when we started the casting process, this was at the very beginning of the year of 2020, which was before when COVID started. And we started getting applications in, because basically you send out the casting brief with all your characters on there, with a description of what they are and kind of the way the character is, and then actors are like, oh, I'm interested in that, I've read the script, I'm interested in this project, I'm going to apply for that. And then obviously, because I'm the casting person, I get flooded with all the emails, which was fun. That was my job, so I enjoyed it. But it was interesting, because obviously you go through all the applications, and then COVID hit. And we were on struggle street for a while, because not only our project, but all the Griffith graduate projects were stuck in a position where we had to cast for a proof of concept animatic visualization thing that was a waste of time. But anyway, the other thing with that was that we had to do self-tapes and like video audition submissions, which was really interesting, because basically what you do then is you create a little audition script and you send that to the actor. They perform it in front of a video camera, they record themselves doing it, and then they send that as like a little MP4 video back to you. And then from there you can kind of watch all the auditions, and it's quite interesting having actors act a script that you've sent them, but with no direction. I always thought that was very interesting going throughout that process, because you get some people who interpret the script one way, and then some people who interpret the script a very different way, which I think is very interesting about the script writing process. And I'd love to hear your comment on this. What's it like kind of looking at a script and working with your various heads of department and making sure that you're all on the same page, because you might read a scene and have a very different interpretation to someone else in your crew. So what are your opinions on that?
For people in the crew, I reckon like making sure everyone in the crew does first of all know the story, because I know that some like other crews, some of their team didn't read like through the whole script. So I think,
really?
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that where people don't even know what's going on. So the first script read that we did with James ages back was really beneficial, I think, for everyone, just to be able to go through it all, know the story, and then James was able to kind of visualize like what he wanted and tell us like what story he wanted to tell. And I think when Matt, the cinematographer, James and I met up during the transition, James was able to like convey to me the story that he wanted to tell, and I think I did get it down pat pretty well. I obviously didn't want to change it too much, but I did want to put my kind of
your own spin on it.
Yeah, a little tiny bit of a spin on it, but I didn't obviously want to change the.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like, especially when you're a director who obviously your main goal is to be the creative lead and vision for a project. And when you're brought onto a production that's already in motion and already has the story and vision in place, it can be sometimes difficult to get your sort of your tone and feeling and your own personal essence into a project. And that's what I find interesting about a lot of big Hollywood stuff, is that when directors come on last minute, you can sometimes tell like there's a conflict of interest here, because you can tell what scene is directed by this person, then what scene's directed by that person. We were fortunate. We were at a stage where by the time you had come on, this was just before principal photography, so everything we see on screen is you. So that was good to see, because a lot of times it can be distracting otherwise. I
think when I did see the script, and obviously because we had proof of concept before that, the one we were actually able to do in person, you can learn a lot of things from POC, and I think even though I didn't direct POC, I think I learned a lot of things from that as well. And even for production design, like we're able to learn like the colors, like what they look like on screen. I think Matt did an amazing job in POC. Like he got all amazing comments straight away, so we kept on that that style. Like his style was already locked in pretty much.
The aesthetic of the film was really good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's a great DOP.
Yeah. And the bright colors as well, like in every scene, like it definitely complemented his work as well. But I think from an acting point of view, I wanted to tone down Julia's character a little bit compared to POC, and make her a bit more relatable. And I think I did that in the final product. Like she was a bit with all the scenes with Murphy, and then like with her mother passing away, like being able to relate to her, even though she was a bit of a hothead as well. I think it was important for the audience to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's a very important thing, is because like that's what I noticed when I was going through the casting process was not only was I picking an actor that was best suited for the character, but I also had to look at did they understand the character. And that was something that me and at this stage I was working with James and Carmen, and we had lots of long conversations about actors not only embodying the character but having a good understanding of the various levels of characterization and the depth of the character, because that's obviously a huge thing. Because that was interesting. Eventually, once we did get close enough to production and the COVID stuff we kind of dealt with, and we were able to kind of get back in person and do a lot of stuff in person, we did then get to do a lot of in-person auditions with a lot of actors. And eventually we got to do chemistry tests, which me as a casting person, I think is one of the most important elements of the casting process, is doing chemistry tests, because you could have a great lead and a great supporting person, but if they don't get along on set, then that can be problematic. And I felt like we had a situation like that with our proof of concept, was where two of our actors didn't really get along. And then it led to a recast situation, and the actress we got for the actual film, I think was a lot better. Yeah. So it was definitely one of those things that you never know until it happens. Because like you said, like, you know, one actor can do a really great job, but chemistry is such an important thing on screen. And when you do those sort of tests, basically what you are doing is getting the actors into a room, and you're doing a scene, and you're basically like, it's like almost like a game. Like the way I've run it is basically you kind of have people on the bench, and then you bring in the two actors, and then they perform the scene. You experiment with it. Obviously, James, the director at the time, was trying different things, and then you bring in another actor, and then you sub that person out. And you do it in various different ways, and then from there you kind of get a sense of who's working well, who's gelling well, and what would be the most exciting thing to see on screen. And I feel like the casting process is very interesting. It's one of the most important elements of a film, because
for sure,
some people might not like to admit it, but actors play probably the most important role in a film.
I mean, they're what you see on screen.
Exactly, yeah. Like, it is kind of interesting because obviously so much effort goes on behind the scenes and behind the camera from the production designer, the sound designer, the cinematographer. But a lot of times they don't get the praise from just general audiences. A lot of times it's actors, because they are the ones performing the characters that the people are watching and enjoying, and that's such an important part. So I think if you've got good actors and good characters, and then you find a good mixture of both on set, that's when you get real great stuff on the screen. So definitely. It's interesting where, you know, I feel like the casting process is very important, and that's why I took it very seriously, because I was one of those people that was like, we need to make sure we get good talent so that they can carry this project. And I'm now interested to hear what your perspective on this, because now once I acquired the talent, basically I was then passing it on to you, and you had to direct them on set. My analogy that I use is that I was basically buying all the toys, and then I get to give them to you, and then you get to play with all the toys. So what was it like working with our amazing cast on set and kind of bringing these characters to life that we had worked on in the script phase, but now getting them on set and then actually bringing it to life on screen?
Yeah, well, it was amazing, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have some rehearsal time before.
Rehearsals are also a huge thing that I always strongly recommend.
Yeah, and I think so, and I think not too many to like overdo it, but because on set you always have that fresh scenes from the script that the actors can pull out of it. But so we had a change of the supporting role last minute, so Paula came on, and she really gelled well with Candace, and I was extremely happy with like that pairing, so thank you for that. But,
it's all good. I'll say Candace played Julia, and Paula played Martha, the maid.
And Paula coming on last minute, she was able to get her lines down. We had like a massive monologue in the middle of it, which was her part, and she did so well to be able to get that down within like 3 days, and then our shooting time was just a week long. But to be able to work with them two mainly on set was like awesome. I only had rehearsals with them, so because the other actors, they were just kind of little minor supporting roles. But it was good, even for the actors that I didn't get to rehearse with. On set, we did a few takes, like if we had time. Time is always like
time
amazing.
is the enemy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it's so good. Like for me as director, I'm like, please just one more, or like the 80s. Like no, but
Saran.
But if we did have time, I'd always want to do like another take if we hadn't got it. You know, you'd rather get the shot. You'd rather get the take that you think like, wow, like that's the one I'm going to use. But yeah, when we were filming, for people that I hadn't rehearsed with, we do like different kind of ways of portraying it, and it'd be complete opposites. Like for example, Boris the solicitor, you do one that was a little more stern, and then one that was a little more like concerned or kind of empathetic with Julia because her mom died. And then at the end of the scene, he goes like, "She's dead." Like, or you could do like, and
you think comedic beat.
It is comedic, and it's funny that he'd say that to her like, "Yes, of course, her mom's dead. Don't make her feel any worse." So. But I think the film itself did have quite a few comedic elements. In the end, in the edit, some of them were cut out, which was very sad. We do have a lot of little tiny scenes cut out. just because I think it flowed more in the end. But, you know, it's different for different audiences, because when it was screened at the New Farm cinemas, we had so many, I don't know if you guys were there, but we had so many laughs. And I was like, wow, we should have kept some of those comedic elements in, because this crowd would have loved it. But compared to, say, when we watched it as a cohort, did we watch it as a cohort?
We did, yeah. It was definitely
at the con. No.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can make it.
Yeah.
I'll say the atmosphere for the cohort screening was definitely a lot different too.
It was different, yeah.
And this is what I find interesting about being filmmakers and then watching your own project back is because especially if you're an on-set person, you know all the ins and outs of how a shot is conceived and how it's all put together. So when you see it in an edit, sometimes it can be difficult to kind of get your mind in the right headspace of being like, I'm watching this for the first time and I don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
So when we did watch it with an audience who had no idea what was coming because they had no sort of involvement in the project, they were just a audience because they were friends, family, and cast members, right?
Yeah.
So it was interesting because they were watching it cold for the first time and they were so surprised.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, the episode does end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And at the end, when that cliffhanger happens and the episode ends and everyone's like, oh no, there's no more,
really?
that's it.
Yeah,
it was amazing because like
so
that's all you hope for, right? With a
Yeah.
cliffhanger is people would be like, oh, I need to see I want to see more.
Yeah.
And that's the exact reaction we got at the end of that screening. And it was
was
well, at least for me,
the
it was so rewarding.
The to be continued.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. I was like, oh my goodness, we should have kept in the you know, the Christ Jewelers joke.
Oh,
do you remember that?
We
in the
had to
middle?
take that out.
We did take it out, yeah.
Aw,
Because
I love that joke.
because it, like, yeah, for example, you know, when you're working with actors, we tried different things for this, like, one little bit that we had, like, and these actors, Candace and Paula, were able to bounce off each other so well, so it was really amazing to be able to work with them, even for this scene, and it turned out really well, but I think just in the end, we cut it out. You know, we could maybe make another cut and put it back in.
Well, it's one of those things I feel like especially when you're editing a project together, sometimes you need to make that hard call of being like, what's working best for the story? Because the story is always the most important part. And sometimes those little comedic beats don't quite fit
land.
the story that you're trying to tell and don't land as well as that you would hope for.
Yep.
But that's, I guess, one of the hardest things is obviously as a director is making sure you're picking the right stuff and keeping it all in. So
Definitely. And the biggest thing that I noticed from beginning, like, to shooting to editing, the story can change, you know, it changes, it changed so much in the end. It turned out really well. Like, we had Dean Law, who gave us Tony and I a great idea to do like an edit, because the film was at about 17 minutes. We ended up cutting it down to 14, I'm pretty sure. But as a challenge, Dean said, try and cut it down to 10 minutes, see what you find, see what you can get out of that. And maybe you'll find something amazing, you know. And we actually did. So it was a good challenge, a good little thing to be able to do. And then instead of, because it was a bit of a rough kind of edit, so the 10-minute one wasn't amazing, but we found some cool gems and then put that into the 14-minute one. So yeah, it's interesting how a story can change completely when you cut things out or add new scenes in, like the ones in the beginning that we had to add in. Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's safe to assume that a story is made in 3 stages. It's made at the script phase, it's made on the production phase, and then it's made in the edit. And they're 3 distinct phases that have all different elements, and when they all come together, and again, assuming everyone in those separate 3 phases are doing their jobs correctly and everyone's on the same page, then I think that's when all the cogs turn and you get a really cool project. So another thing I want to ask you, Holly, is that with regards to production design, you said that you have to work with obviously the cinematographer and lighting. What's it like getting the visual and aesthetic level right, so not only does the set look good, but also it looks good on camera? What's that dynamic like?
Matt is a really good person to work with because he's pretty honest about what he needs, and he has a really good vision. He was pretty open to let me kind of just design it as long as it worked for him, which I have got a little bit of background in cinematography, so I was able to kind of know what would work properly and what wouldn't just fuck him off completely. We did have a couple moments at like 11 o'clock at night after doing a full day of shooting where we all had an emotional breakdown. It was wonderful. As
many film sets
I think
have.
the whole week was there was some big moments, but we got through it. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, we just our kind of overall goal was to make the hotel really ugly.
Yeah.
So we chose a horrible puke green wall color and then matched that with like a dirty browny red and just kind of made it look a bit yuck. But then all the Christmas lights incorporated in that and made it have a little bit of prettiness in there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of had that nice little flare, and that all really work together with the camera because he got all these beautiful like lens flares.
And I love the window side with the curtains and the wallpaper. It's just like really
yeah
cool.
We love the wallpaper. The wallpaper is so 80s.
It's still in my room. I
you
still
have
it if you want it. Yeah. I can give it back to you.
Oh, I have so much stuff I still need to get rid of. Yeah, like the wallpaper, really, we wanted to make it pop. We wanted to make sure we had a feature wall and it wasn't all just like this plain green color because then you get disorientated. You wouldn't know where you're looking. So we wanted to make sure that it was really easy to figure out where in the room you were, but we still wanted to have like little bits on camera that would really show up and like add a bit of sparkle. So we had all the tinsel and the lights that all they added the bouquet. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
bouquet. Yeah. All the bouquet of that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, setting a murder mystery at Christmas time, I thought was a genius idea.
Yeah.
And that whole idea of not only having this mystery element with these two characters that are kind of thrust into this situation, but then setting it at Christmas, I feel like it added a new level to the murder mystery that we've seen so many times. And I think it's interesting because up until recently, I feel like that genre had really kind of not died off, but it was not as prevalent as a lot of other film genres. And I don't think it was really until Rian Johnson came out with Knives Out that everyone's like, holy shit, let's see more of this. And I think he's making a sequel, which should be fun. But then again, our project I thought was interesting. A little tidbit was that James, because obviously I was involved with the project quite early on as well, and I knew James and the story he was creating at the script level, and he was writing the script before Knives Out had come out. So it was one of those things. I said to James like, Knives Out's coming out soon, and he's like, yeah. He's like, everyone's going to compare this to that. Yeah, and it's like, yeah. So that was just one of those timing things. It's just like, it's just inevitable.
Yeah, for sure. At least it did have that little like Christmas twist.
Exactly, which I think sets it apart to a lot of other murder mystery type stuff, which I thought was interesting.
I think so.
But with regards to like lighting and stuff, obviously with regards to creating a set, do you have to factor in where the lights go and then also where the props and like stuff inside the set are going? Because I can imagine that'd be quite tricky, not only getting the camera in the right position, but also getting the various different lights as well.
Yeah. Well, Riley was really great to work with. He's only got a little bit of experience, but he knows how to use it. Yeah. And pretty much I knew that I needed to have like at least one wall open in all the sets so that they could like angle the camera and the lights and wherever they needed. And like the flats are only a certain height, so they can put stuff over the top as well. We did chuck in a couple of practical lights to just kind of give that extra flair. And there's that like nice purple glow coming off the Christmas tree. Yeah. But Riley was amazing to work with as well. Riley and Matt worked really well together. Yeah. And I kind of just went through Matt for all of it, and then on set with all of them was just a blast. And
it was super fun. And I think like our set, even compared to other people's sets that I heard, like our set was really fun, and we had such a good time.
It was so much fun because I had a pre-production role, so I really had no business being on set.
Hung out.
I just wanted to come and hang out, and I'm so glad that I did, because I didn't in second year. I did my job, and then I was like, I'm gonna let everyone else do their job. But then coming into like the graduate slate, I was like, no, I want to be on set, and I just want to be there. And I was so thankful that I was, because not only was it a super fun set to just be a part of, but just seeing everyone do their jobs and just working so efficiently was very pleasing to me, because I don't like, I could have been on a set where things were going wrong and then I'm sitting there having no control over anything, and I'm just like, no, what's happening? But I was just sitting there and I was like, this is fucking awesome watching everyone do such a great job. And that's why I was so very pleased when I saw the final product, because I was like, you never know when you're making it on set, because like you can look through the split and see what the camera is recording for that shot, but you never know how it's going to all cut together. And then when you incorporate music and sound effects and how it's all going to sound and feel. So, once it all came together and you got like the thunder in the background and stuff, it's like, it really came to life. It was really good. So
yeah, I think that was a great thing about our crew. Like, we were able to have a lot of fun, but we also knew what we were doing. Like, we knew what we were doing in our jobs and we're efficient enough to be able to get it done. But have a good time and not like stress too much, even though it was stressful because we had a lot of issues. Like, for example, even one of our actors, Will, he had to get surgery during the middle of shoots. So and we had to reshoot some of his scenes, and then he was like, I can't come in. He was so disappointed that he couldn't come in, but obviously like health is first, and obviously he had to get surgery, so that's completely okay. So there was a lot of creative work had to be done there. Like Matt and I had to figure out what the shots could be like. We had to change the shot list to work around putting a double in instead of the actual actor and like not show his face, but then use the old footage from before with his face when he sits down on the chair in the first scene. But yeah, secretly that's actually Damon.
So this is what I love about filmmaking is that you can do little tricks like that, and when you're watching it, you never even notice, because I didn't even know that. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
What's one of the main things that you feel like you learnt throughout your time working on this project? What was the one thing that you kind of took away and was like, I'm going to continue it, take this on and continue it onto future projects?
I kind of decided that my favorite part of prod design is building the set, and I find buying the props a bit boring because I get too absorbed. I like go to the shops and I'm like, wow, this would look great in my house.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly right.
Yeah, it's kind of too dangerous for me to buy the props because I end up buying things for myself as well. But yeah, like the props are fun and I really like making them, but I don't really like just going out and buying them. So I kind of like cemented exactly what I wanted to do, and I actually ended up doing the big wound on Will's neck. And I love that. Yeah. I really like special effects. Yeah. Special effects makeup is a lot of fun, and I want to do more of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's probably what I took away.
Nice. Yeah, for me, probably like the relationship that I had with the actors in the end was so strong, and we were like so close, and for me that's something that I'm going to be able to bring like to future films. Like now I have more connections. I think it's more the connections for me. And maybe even writing. Like I'd probably want to do a bit more writing because I haven't been able to do that recently. And I think with more time on my hands, I could, get into that more, because I was like, James wrote the script, but put me writing it like 1 or 2 scenes or like changing a few lines was really interesting for me to be able to change it up and write some of the scripts.
One of the things I learned from working on the project was that working with actors is a very unique process, and you need to make sure you're giving it a lot of time and care, because like throughout my time at uni, I specialized in directing and casting and working with actors, and finding that relationship, especially within the audition phase, is very important, because you only have a limited time to spend with them, and it's almost like a job interview, but you're asking them to be very vulnerable with how they are conducting themselves, because especially depending on the scene, they can be quite vulnerable in performing the scene. So one of the things I learnt was just being nice, clear and concise with the people that are coming in and wanting to be a part of your project, because obviously they're there for a reason, and they want to be a part of your project and your story. And that's, I think, is very important, is that you're building nice, good relationships with people and making sure that everything is moving smoothly, because the most important thing about this industry, I feel like, is it's not what you know, it's who you know, and making sure you have enough good connections within the industry and building good relationships with people, I think, is very important. And that's one of the big things that I learnt was, obviously working with actors in various different ways was obviously very informative for me, but it just reinforced me throughout my time working in that process, was making good connections is so important, not only for people in front of the screen, but also behind the screen as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even like scheduling and stuff was a big thing, because I'm into assistant directing as well. And takeaway for me was sometimes, for example, with our shot list, maybe we, shot too far and we had like a really, really long shot list, and then we had to cut down like on the day. So sometimes, you've got to work with what you got. You work with the time that you have, and be realistic sometimes, instead of rushing something. You could have the time and maybe do a few less shots and focus on the acting, focus on the actors, make sure that they get their take, instead of rushing it. So I think that was another thing that I took away. Yeah.
As both of you in your individual roles, what would be one piece of advice, you as the director and then you as production designer, what would be one tip that you would give to future filmmakers who are potentially interested in going into not only a director but also maybe a production designer? What would be one tip that you would give?
Tip for me is keeping up the morale on set, like throughout the whole week for us, throughout the whole shoot is really, really important. Because sometimes there's down days, like you have down days with crew, with actors, but you've just, you and the first AD have got to be the people that, make sure that everyone's having a good time, make sure everyone's well fed, everyone loves to not be hungry and be well fed on set and just have a good time. Like sometimes things don't go your way, but that's just filmmaking, and maybe in the end it'll turn out amazing. You never know.
Probably my thing would be make sure you're prepared and you're organized before you come on set, because prod design develops a lot in pre-production. And that's when you're like gathering props, you're preparing what you're going to do, and I find that the best way to make yourself comfortable and prepared is to be organized and have everything ready, and don't be getting stuff the day before, because I'm a bit guilty of that.
That's in all areas for sure. Like definitely be prepared. I know some people don't like some DOPs don't like to go on with shot lists, but I would, or for me, like I'd definitely love to be prepared, have a shot list,
and just make sure like when you're on set that you're keeping happy. Like sometimes things don't work out how you imagine. Sometimes like you put up the wall, you put up like the flats, and it's not what you envisioned in your head, but you can always pull some camera magic. Yeah. And it sometimes looks actually pretty good.
Yeah. And if you work together, like everyone can work together to fix something, we had a location pull out on the last day, and after everything that had happened throughout the week, we were like, wow, this is
this really sucks.
This is really the last thing that's going to happen to us. But, we all had a fighting spirit. We were like, we've got to do this. This last day, last scene, we can do this. So in the end, we found a spot at Joel's.
Yeah, my partner's house.
Yeah, so Holly's partner's house, Joel. And that was awesome. It was so good that he was able to give that to us, and then we went straight over there. It was really close by, so that was good. And we got all the gear over and just did it, There's always ways to workshop it, ways to figure things out. And,
Well, filmmaking is very much so you got to figure it out as you go along sometimes. Yeah. A lot of times you can have this, this massive plan, and you're going to do this, and you're going to accomplish that on this day, and then this day you're going to do this. But sometimes things, like you said, don't go your way, and things can fall apart. And as a filmmaker, I feel like it's very important to be resilient and making sure that once something goes wrong, that you put on that problem-solving cap and you look for a solution instead of complaining about the problem. And I've noticed this, especially throughout my time at film school, is that a lot of people like to complain about certain things when they don't go your way. So I feel like as a mentality thing, if you want to be a filmmaker, it's very important to be resilient and always look for the solutions instead of complaining about the problems, because you will never get anywhere if you're focusing on the problems. As a filmmaker, there's always going to be something goes wrong. Always. Even the best films you've ever seen have had problems. But it's the creative genius that every filmmaker has that can look around the problem and be like, how do we fix this? How do we make this better? And I think from there, sometimes you can get something like that little piece of magic that you didn't expect. But sometimes when you're looking for gold, you might find a nugget. Sometimes you might find something even better. So you never know. And that's one of the things I would say to future filmmakers is just always make sure you're ready to go and looking for solutions, because problems will arise, and expect them. But in saying that, always have a plan. I'll say don't be one of those filmmakers that's like, I'll figure it out on the day. Always come in with a plan. And then once plan A fails, always have a backup plan. So always have a plan A, B, C, that sort of thing. So just always be as prepared and organized as possible. That'd be the one thing I would say.
Like, for example, we even had one day our makeup artist accidentally did the wrong makeup for the wrong scene. And we didn't notice until halfway through the shoot, because we're in this dark room and the makeup was supposed to be purple when it was pink eyeshadow. And, you know, it might not seem, it's not necessarily the biggest deal. But it was just, you know, yeah, another obstacle, but you just got to get over it. You got to fix it. Bella Abel was able to like quickly get her own purple makeup and fix it herself. So it all turned out well in the end. Like, you've got to problem solve all the time.
Always be spontaneous.
Yeah. And be like optimistic about it as well.
Having an optimistic attitude is always also very important, I feel like. Because a lot of filmmakers can be very like pessimistic and be like, oh, it's not going to work, we can't do this, we can't do that, oh, woe was me. But if you can kind of have an optimistic perspective and be very positive, like, I always try and live my life as positively as possible, and I feel like, you know, if you can get I guess for our situation, we were always working with people that are always very positive and had a good outlook, not only towards the production, but towards life as well. And I feel like, again, just associate yourself with good people and good work will follow. So.
Yeah, I always have to remind myself as well is if something's not quite right and like you notice it and you're like just there staring at it while they're shooting and like everyone's going to notice, everyone's going to see. No one is going to notice.
That's
like,
the thing,
The audience never knows, like, unless you point it out directly.
I always, when my family rewatches it, I always, like, in my head, I'm like, did you see it? Did you see that?
Yeah.
They're like,
no, like, we had an issue with, there was a bouquet of flowers on the table, and when we were doing principal, it was made out of tissue paper.
Yeah, different colour.
Yeah, we had Riley do the tissue paper, and then when we shot pickups, we didn't have the tissue paper. And we had to make it out of a picnic cloth, a plastic picnic cloth. And thank God Riley was still there and he was able to make like this perfect little flower. Yeah. And I was there like, it doesn't look right. It's not the same texture. The light's not going to shine through the same way. You can't even tell on screen. Like, I was just overreacting.
There's a few little cute Easter eggs in there, like different things that I always point out. Like whenever I'm showing my friends and family, but no one else would ever notice.
No,
you know,
they never pick it up.
It's mainly about the story and what you're watching. Like, people are more interested in the story and the characters than they are thinking about like this one tiny little Conti error. Like, obviously Conti is important, and shout out to Taylor, she did an amazing job as continuity, so important, but the super minor things really aren't, like, in the end, if you wanted to create just create an amazing story instead of like focusing on those little things.
Story is always king.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you want to add with regards to your involvement on the project and stuff like that? Any little stories or tidbits that you want to share?
So long ago now.
Not particularly. I think we've gone over quite a lot of it. Like,
it was a very fun project to work with, and I'm very glad I was a part of it. Really special people and a really fun little story. And I'm glad to have it a part of my portfolio, and I learnt a hell of a lot.
Exactly.
I learnt how to fake a hole in the wall. That was fun.
Right? Oh yes. And
actually, this is a fun story.
Spoiler.
What's your
spoiler alert? No,
okay. This is a fun story. So the hole in the wall is actually made out of a garbage bin.
Yes,
and please do tell the story.
This is something you don't know, Helena. So when we were like a week out of shooting, and you're like, oh, let's have a meeting and stuff. What's your idea for the hole in the wall? I'll be dead serious. I completely fucking forgotten.
No, because then we got to the day, and I was like, are we still, like, I really want it. Are we still doing it?
Yeah, and I'm like, we'll VFX it.
And Lachlan McFarlane, our VFX, he was like, I could definitely do it. But I was like, a lot of the time, practical is best, and then build on the practical with VFX. Like, it's obviously easier. I'm sure Lachlan could have done it without it, but
I'm looking back on it. I really should have like given that job to someone and just like not just being like, oh, I'll get to it, because I had 4 different sets I was already making, and then I'm just like, I've made the wall, I've made the room, that's all we need. There's a picture over that, we'll deal with that later. And just kind of shoved it to the back. So when we were on set, we were literally like on the day shooting, and we had like we'd gone and bought a Bunnings bin. And I just happened to have some terracotta clay. And I was literally sitting there in the corner with like all my prod girls, and we were just sitting around this bin like shoving like really gross terracotta clay and like a mixture of just dirt and mud and rocks onto this bin. I got my favorite pants covered in paint. I was sad. It was
And even though like it was, thank you for doing that, because it was such a
it worked out.
It worked out really well, and I was just like so thankful that you guys were able to do that, because in the end,
like everyone was skeptical about it when they saw it, like on the rig. They're like, maybe.
Yeah, and I think even everyone's skeptical, but I was really set on it.
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I'm like, I stick my head through this. This looks real.
Yeah. So I think it turned out well, and then Lachlan was able to VFX the rest of it in. So
well, the story homage to the Shawshank Redemption I thought was genius.
Yes.
Because I love that movie.
What a
the
great
ending
film.
is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And when I knew you guys were going to be doing that in this, I was like, yes, that's going to be dope. So hopefully there's more.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. We'll
that would
see.
be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, Helena, Holly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I think this was a really great conversation, and I feel like I definitely got a new perspective on both your roles and stuff, and hopefully those at home who are listening or watching have as well. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you
That
for having
concludes today's episode. So thank you very much for watching. If you are listening on an audio form, you make sure you are subscribed and following the podcast link. And if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you are liked the video and are subscribed. And I will catch you in another video.